On Christmas morning, I went outside to find that every decoration from our yard had been stolen: the lights, the wreath, even the inflatable Santa my kids loved. I thought it was random vandalism until I walked past my neighbor's house and saw my decorations set up in his yard, as if they were his own. When I confronted him, he smiled coldly and said, "You left it out. Must not have wanted it." That night, we cried around a bare tree as he hosted a huge Christmas party featuring our stolen holiday cheer. This happened Christmas 2022. We live in a suburb just outside of Columbus, Ohio. Not a fancy one. Just normal middle-class houses, a couple decent schools, some old trees, a park down the road where people walk their dogs. You get the idea? My wife, Melanie, loves Christmas more than anyone I've ever met. She starts planning in September. She's the kind of woman who hand makes half the ornaments and writes cards by hand. Our kids, Sam and Lizzie, were 7 and 5 that year, and they were just as crazy about it. We spent almost 2 full weekends putting everything up. Lights all around the roofline, icicle lights dripping from the porch, a giant inflatable Santa waving at the street. Melanie and Lizzie made a wreath together one night while it snowed outside. Sam helped me put together the little reindeer and sleigh we set near the sidewalk. It wasn't perfect, nothing we do ever is, but it felt good. It felt right. When we plugged it all in at night, the whole yard glowed. Every time I pulled into the driveway after work and saw it, I smiled without even meaning to. That's what Christmas should feel like, right? Christmas Eve was great. We did all our traditions: cookies for Santa, a fire in the fireplace, reading the night before Christmas. The kids left a note for Santa and went to bed so excited they could barely close their eyes. Melanie and I stayed up a little later, just sitting together by the tree, drinking hot chocolate and talking about how lucky we felt. I kissed her goodnight and said, "This is going to be the best Christmas yet." And I believed it. I woke up early the next morning. Around 6. I like to have a quiet cup of coffee before the chaos starts. Plus, I had a few last-minute things to set up under the tree. I shuffled into the living room, still half asleep, and looked out the big front window. I remember feeling confused first. Like my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. The yard was empty. No Santa. No lights. No wreath. No reindeer. Nothing. Gone. I blinked hard. Rubbed my eyes. Looked again. Gone. I called upstairs, not really thinking. "Mel? Did you bring the stuff in?" She came down the stairs a minute later, tying her robe, hair messy from sleep. "What are you talking about?" she asked, yawning. I just pointed out the window. Her mouth dropped open. She made this tiny noise, like a gasp and a sob caught together. The kids heard us. They came running down. "Where's Santa?" Lizzie said, looking around. "Where's all the lights?" Sam said. I couldn't find the words. I stood there like a fool while my wife and kids stared out at our empty yard on Christmas morning. Sam tugged at my hand. "Daddy, was it the Grinch?" I wanted to tell him yes. I wanted to tell him something easy. But I couldn't lie. "Not today." "I don't know, buddy," I said, kneeling down to him. "I don't know." We tried to go on with the morning. Open presents. Drink cocoa. Smile. But the magic was gone. You could feel it. Lizzie didn't even want to open half her gifts. Sam just sat there, playing with the same toy over and over, quiet. Melanie kept putting on a brave face, but I caught her wiping her eyes more than once. By noon, it felt like we were all just pretending. I couldn't take it. I needed air. I needed to do something. "I'm going for a walk," I said, grabbing my coat. Melanie just nodded without looking up. The snow was still fresh and powdery. It crunched under my boots as I walked the sidewalk. I thought about maybe calling the cops, but what could they do? It wasn't like I had video. Wasn't like they'd launched some big investigation over a few stolen Christmas decorations. I rounded the corner, not even really thinking about where I was going. And that's when I saw it. Frank Meyer's house. 2 doors down. Lights blazing. Santa waving. Reindeer sitting perfectly by the sidewalk. My wife's wreath hanging proud on his door. It was all ours. Every last thing. At first, I didn't believe it. I thought maybe he had the same stuff. But no. I knew the marks on that inflatable Santa. The patch where Sam had ripped it last year, and I fixed it with duct tape. I knew the handmade wreath, the lopsided bow Lizzie had tied herself. It was ours. He had taken everything and set it up like it was his. I stared for a long time, heart thudding so loud I could barely hear the Christmas music playing from his open door. I walked up his driveway, not even caring that there were people inside, laughing, drinking, carrying on. I knocked hard. Frank answered after a second. He was wearing a ridiculous red sweater with a cartoon reindeer on it, holding a beer in one hand, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. When he saw me, the smile barely twitched. "Merry Christmas," he said, like nothing was wrong. "Those are my decorations," I said, my voice low and tight. "You stole them." He just shrugged. "You left em out," he said. "Must not have wanted em." I stood there, breathing heavy, feeling like my blood was about to boil over. "You think that's how this works?" I said, taking a step forward. "You think you can just steal from your neighbors and act like it's no big deal?" Frank took a long sip of his beer, not even flinching. "You want em back?" he said finally, smiling wider. "Call the cops. See what they do." And then he shut the door in my face. Just like that. I stood there for a minute, fists clenched so tight my nails cut into my palms. I wanted to break down his door. Tear down every light, every decoration, throw it all back in his smug face. But I didn't. Not yet. I turned and walked back home, the snow crunching louder than before under my boots, like even the earth knew what had just happened. When I came in, Melanie looked up at me, her eyes red. I didn't have to say anything. She knew. She came over and wrapped her arms around me, and I held her tight, feeling her shoulders shake. That night, we sat together in the dark living room, just the 4 of us, no lights, no music, no decorations. We could hear the music from Frank's house 2 doors down. We could hear people laughing, shouting, singing carols off-key. Sam climbed into my lap without a word. Lizzie curled up next to Melanie. And I made a promise right there, silent in the dark. Frank Meyer was going to regret the day he ever messed with my family. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Frank's smug face. All I could hear was his stupid voice telling me to call the cops. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the dark window, planning. By 3 a.m., I knew what I had to do. The day after Christmas, most people were still in a holiday haze. Kids playing with new toys, parents lounging in pajamas, leftovers getting heated up. Not me. I was up early, moving fast. First, I called in a favor. I work construction, and one of my buddies, Jake, does side work in security systems. Cameras, alarms, you name it. He owed me from when I covered a job for him back in July. Jake showed up around 10 a.m., still wearing his Santa pajamas under his coat. He didn't ask questions when I told him what I needed. Just nodded and got to work. By noon, I had 3 cameras hidden around my property. One over the garage, one by the back gate, and one tucked inside the front wreath we replaced that morning. Frank thought he could just take from us and smile about it. He didn't know me. For the next few days I watched. Every time Frank left his house, I made a note. What time he left for work. What time he came home. When he took the trash out. When his friends came over. I didn't rush. I didn't act angry. Not yet. I needed to make sure that when I hit him, it would land hard. It was New Year's Eve when I got my break. I saw Frank loading up his truck, coolers, speakers, folding tables. Probably heading to some big party. I watched him pull away. Then waited another full hour to be sure. The street was dead. Everyone either at parties or inside with their families. I walked down to Frank's house, gloves on, hoodie pulled up. I had everything I needed in my pockets. It took less than 10 minutes. First, I took back what was ours. The inflatable Santa. The handmade wreath. The light strands. Everything that had been stolen from us. I didn't just tear it down either. I made sure to carefully dismantle everything, pack it neatly into trash bags, and haul it quietly back to my garage. But that wasn't enough. Frank needed to feel it. So I left him something in return. In the middle of his bare front lawn, where the inflatable Santa had stood proudly for weeks, I hammered a wooden sign deep into the frozen ground. It read, "Thief lives here." Big black spray-painted letters. Impossible to miss. Then I walked back home, heart pounding, adrenaline rushing like a river in my veins. The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. Melanie kept glancing at me over breakfast. She knew something was up. She didn't ask though. God, I love that woman. Around noon I heard it. Yelling. Cursing. The slam of a truck door. I looked out the window. Frank stood in his yard, red-faced, yanking at the wooden sign like it had personally insulted his mother. Neighbors poked their heads out of doors. Curtains twitched. Phones came out. People were filming. Frank finally ripped the sign free and threw it into his truck bed. He stormed up the driveway, fists clenched, eyes wild. For a second, I thought he was coming for me. I opened the front door and stood there, arms crossed, ready. But he didn't. He hesitated, looked around, saw all the neighbors watching. He turned, got in his truck, and peeled out so fast he sprayed snow across the street. Later that afternoon, the neighbor from across the street, old Mr. Holloway, came over while I was shoveling the driveway. "Good riddance," he said, leaning on his cane. "Always knew that Meyer boy was no good." I smiled politely, didn't say much. Inside, I felt a satisfaction I can't even describe. It wasn't over yet, though. Frank might have been embarrassed, but he still thought he could push us around. He still thought he was safe. He didn't realize the worst was still coming. I thought the sign would be the end of it. I thought Frank would slink away, humiliated, and maybe finally leave us alone. I was wrong. A few days after New Year's, just as life was getting back to normal, we got a letter in the mail. No return address, cheap envelope, my name scribbled on the front in black ink. I opened it right there at the kitchen counter while Melanie packed the kids' lunches. Inside was a single piece of paper, typed out in big block letters. "You messed with the wrong person." That was it. No signature. No explanation. Melanie saw my face and asked what it was. I crumpled it up before she could read it. "Junk mail," I lied. I didn't want her worrying. Not yet. But my stomach twisted into a knot. That night, I didn't sleep again. I stayed up, sitting in the living room, listening. And around 2:30 in the morning I heard it. A car engine, idling too long outside. I peeked through the curtains. It was Frank. His truck parked across the street. Lights off. Engine running. Just sitting there, watching our house. I almost went out there right then, but something told me to wait. I watched him for almost 20 minutes before he finally drove off. The next morning, there were deep tire tracks in the snow right outside our house. Right where the kids play in the summertime. That was it. Frank had crossed the line. He wasn't just being a petty jerk anymore. He was threatening my family. I called Jake again. He set up 2 more cameras, hidden better this time, covering the street and the driveway. Then I got to work on my real plan. Because Frank thought he was tough. Thought he could scare me. But I grew up rougher than he could imagine. My old man used to say, "The meanest dog isn't the one who barks. It's the one who waits until your back's turned." And I had been waiting. I started digging. It wasn't hard. Frank Meyer had a record. Not a long one, but enough. Back in 2012, he got arrested for drunk driving. Blew twice the legal limit. Barely kept his license because he knew a guy in the department. Then in 2015, he got into a fistfight at a bar downtown. Put a guy in the hospital. Charges dropped because the other guy refused to testify. It painted a picture. A bad one. And I knew exactly how to use it. I printed copies of everything, public records, news clippings, even his mugshot from the DUI. I bundled it all into plain manila envelopes. Then, late one night, I delivered them. One to the HOA president's mailbox. One to every neighbor within 3 houses. One taped to the door of the local American Legion Hall where Frank always tried to act like some big patriotic hero. No return address. No fingerprints. Just the truth. By the next weekend, Frank couldn't show his face without getting dirty looks. Parents pulled their kids away from him at the grocery store. Old ladies crossed the street rather than walk past him. The HOA sent him a formal complaint, citing community standards of behavior. I heard through the grapevine he even got suspended from the VFW club he liked to brag about. Frank tried to act like it didn't bother him. He mowed his lawn with a tight jaw. He drove slower down the block. He stopped waving at people, stopped smiling. He was crumbling. And it felt good. But then, the final twist. One night, Melanie woke me up around midnight, whispering that she heard something outside. I got up, grabbed the bat I kept under the bed, and crept to the window. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I spotted it. Frank, sneaking through our side yard, near the fence. I didn't think. I just acted. I flung the door open and stormed outside, barefoot, bat in hand. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice cracking through the cold night air. "What the hell are you doing?" Frank froze, caught in the porch light like a rat in a trap. For a second, he looked like he might run. Then he did something I didn't expect. He dropped to his knees. Hands up. Begging. "Man, please," he said, voice shaking. I just wanted it to stop. I stood there, bat still raised, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. "You started this," I said. "You stole from my family. You threatened us." He started crying. Real tears. Pathetic, gasping sobs. "I lost my job," he said. "My wife's leaving me. I'm getting evicted. Everyone thinks I'm a monster." He looked up at me, face twisted with desperation. "Please," he begged. "I'm sorry. Please." I stood there, breathing heavy, snow biting my bare feet. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered Lizzie crying by the empty Christmas tree. I remembered Melanie quietly putting away the stockings because it felt too sad. And I remembered Sam, asking if the Grinch was real. I lowered the bat. Not out of kindness. Out of mercy. But I wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. I stared down at Frank, still on his knees in the snow, his hands shaking, his nose running. "Please," he kept saying. "Please, man. I'm sorry." But sorry didn't fix it. Sorry didn't put back the Christmas morning he stole from my kids. Sorry didn't erase the fear he put into my wife when she saw him lurking outside our house. Sorry didn't make him any less of a thief, a coward, a liar. He made choices. Now he had to live with them. I stepped back and pointed the bat toward the street. "Get off my property," I said. He scrambled to his feet and backed away, almost slipping on the ice. "I mean it," I said louder. "If I ever see you near my house again, near my kids, near my wife, I won't call the cops next time." Frank nodded fast, like a little kid who just got caught stealing candy. He didn't say another word. He just stumbled off into the night, disappearing into the darkness like the rat he was. The next day, I filed a formal complaint with the police. I turned over the footage from my security cameras showing Frank sneaking onto my property. They opened a file. Said they would keep an eye on him. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to make sure he stayed scared. Enough to make sure he knew I wasn't playing games. It didn't take long after that. 2 weeks later, a moving truck pulled up to Frank's house. Melanie and I stood at the front window, drinking coffee, watching. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. Frank loaded what little he had left into the truck, alone. No friends. No family. No one helping him. He didn't even look around. Just kept his head down, ashamed. When the truck finally pulled away, the street felt lighter. Cleaner. Like some heavy sickness had lifted. We rebuilt after that. We bought new decorations for the next Christmas, bigger, brighter, better. The kids helped pick them out. We hung them early, proud. And when we flipped the switch and lit up the whole yard, it wasn't just lights we were seeing. It was a reminder. You don't let people like Frank take things from you. You stand up. You fight back. You make sure they never forget what they did. Looking back now, part of me knows I went too far. The sign, the digging into his past, the public shame, it was brutal. Maybe more brutal than it had to be. But then I remember the way my daughter cried. The way my son asked if the Grinch was real. And I know I would do it all over again. Because when you mess with someone's family, someone's heart, you better believe you're gonna pay for it. And Frank Meyer paid every damn cent.